I've always wanted to discuss one specific stat in Arcane Odyssey's plethora of stats. This specific stat is attack size. Notorious for being a highway to free kills in PvP, I want to discuss why I believe Arcane Odyssey is better off without attack size as a whole, the consequences the stat has already caused, and what could occur within attack size's future if it isn't changed drastically or even removed from Arcane Odyssey. But to be able to discuss attack size, I must first discuss stats in Arcane Odyssey as a whole, which can be split into three distinct categories: primary, secondary, and a sort of pseudo-tertiary. Primary stats concern your power and defense, which are linear stats. The increase given to health and damage respectively is at a 1-to-1 ratio with the amount of power or defense you have. Our sort of tertiary stats involve drawback, insanity, and warding. Secondary stats, which are going to be one of the main focuses of the video, alongside primary, involve all of the following: attack speed, agility, intensity, resistance, regeneration, armor piercing, and last but not least, attack size. Secondary stats are logarithmic. Logarithmic lines are the inverse function of exponentials. As exponentials have a greater output the greater the input, but as the input increases, we begin to see a larger increase in output. Logarithmic graphs do the exact opposite. They begin to level off at higher amounts, giving what the Arcane Odyssey community labels as diminishing returns. I don't think there's any problems with the formula used for secondary stats. Matter of fact, I think it's ingenious as it forces players to not entirely focus on one secondary stat, unless putting a lot into their primary stats, to diversify their build somewhat. The main problem I see with attack size is rooted from the fundamentals of Arcane Odyssey, alongside every other game in the Arcane series, going back as far as Arcane Adventures, that being tiers and leveling. In Arcane Odyssey, when we level up, we gain 2 stat points, which we are free to invest in either magic, vitality, strength, and weapons. As you'll know, at certain thresholds, the tier of your spells, rights, or strength techniques can increase, which increases the base size of the spell, its clashing power, and some of the visuals. For instance, if you're playing mage, you unlock explosion at 30 magic, and at 130 magic, your explosion spell reaches tier 2, increasing what was just previously mentioned. Hence, we indirectly get a size increase with our level. We also get two other things increase when we level up in Arcane Odyssey, that being our base health, independent of vitality of course, and our base damage. Both of these two stats are increased via linear primary stats, yet size, which I've now just informed you has the potency to increase with level, given the correct investments to your stats, increases with a secondary stat, which comes off as rather bizarre. This brings forth a very important question. Would attack size do better as a primary stat? I'm unsure of this myself. If it were a primary stat, it would directly compete with the likes of power and defense, creating more of a need to scrape off damage and health in order to maintain a large AoE, which could create scenarios where people who run at high attack size deal either horrendously low damage or have horrendously low health, turning primary stats into less of a power versus defense game, but instead a rather bizarre game of rock, paper, scissors. But that doesn't mean attack size as a whole is a good idea. Whilst yes, changing it into a primary stat looks like a good idea on paper, this wouldn't remove one of the consequences of this size epidemic, that being European clans. I didn't mean to call out a bunch of clans in my region, but I'm sure it's obvious to them what I'm trying to say. Mendasium, the Order of Emerus, and Raid Force are just a few of the shit stains of clans which advertise themselves as PvP clans. But whenever I'm engaged in a gank with them, they all seem to have one thing in common. They use ridiculously high amounts of attack size. And I'm sure this is a problem in other regions as well, where clans almost use attack size as a puppet to make their clan look better. It's an ego inflator, and it makes them think they're much better at the game than they really are. Having the ability to land your shots without having your cursor on someone is a blessing, yes, but I don't think it's a fair blessing. And I know what you're thinking. Why don't you just give in to the meta and start running attack size, like them? And that's a simple answer derived from my own morals. I want to play Arcane Odyssey fairly. My clan, Neptune, the current number 19 on leaderboard, which you can join with the first link in the video's description, introduced limits to how much attack size my members can run on their Neptune files, because not only do I want to play the game fairly, but I want to be amongst people who think alike to how I do. It's more rewarding to spend time PvPing in the Elysian with your clan and notice that your aim is improving. Isn't that the whole point of there being projectile spells in the game? Or the rush of excitement you get from being able to hit something consistently which you once couldn't? Attack size strips this away from you and is a free ticket to being better at Arcane Odyssey. But if you want a genuine ticket on improving how you play Arcane Odyssey, I consider joining my clan, Neptune. We've changed a lot since dropping from number 1 on the leaderboard at the start of the Dark Sea update. We're now more of like a closely knit friend group type of clan, which began from the remains of the Neptune I disbanded all those months ago. I believe we're a very welcoming community. We engage in VC events often. We do a lot of stuff outside of Arcane Odyssey because we understand sometimes the game's kind of dry, man. And if you're not interested in even joining the clan whatsoever, you can still join the Discord server, become a visitor, and still have the same amount of engagement with our community as any other clan member in Neptune would.